Hello and welcome to another day on Cornwall Pocket Farm, where I try and figure out how to live more sustainably on 300 square metres in the city. Today it is the last one actually in my Capsule Wardrobe series, which was the filming that I did before I went on my big trip to Europe. So this is the last piece of clothing that I actually made, and it wasn't on the original plan. It was a last-minute decision, really based on the weather forecast that I was seeing for Europe. So obviously in New Zealand it's winter and in Europe it's summer. But the temperatures in Europe were actually lower than we were having in New Zealand. This was sort of a week or two before I was going away, and I was really concerned that I was going to be cold. So I decided to knock up a last-minute coat, as you do. So it really was last minute. This was the week before I went, essentially, that I did this. The weekend and the week before I went, I made this coat. I made it out of some fabric I had in my stash anyway, and also some patterns that I had in my stash which I'd got from a charity shop, as I usually do, and I sort of combined them all to make the coat that I had in my head. So anyway, this is the video of the making of that, and then after that, of course, there will be the reveal. So of course, as I said, this is the last item of clothing in the Capsule Wardrobe series, but I thought I would do a couple more videos because I did do some filming of sort of everything with everything. So before I went away, I tried every single piece of clothing on with every other piece of clothing to see all the different combinations, so that I had an idea of sort of, yeah, what I could wear and what I could wear for different events and activities and all that type of thing. So I have that video, which I will put up after this one, and then of course I thought I'd do a review video. What worked, what didn't work as well, what I wore a lot, what was really comfortable. So I thought I'd just do a little bit on the stats of my capsule wardrobe, just the basics of like how many outfits I achieved, how many items there were, what it sort of cost me, those types of things. I thought maybe you guys might be interested in that. So, and it sort of wraps up the capsule wardrobe series. One of the things I'm doing at the moment, which is very exciting, is if you've been a watcher of my channel for some time, you'll know that I designed a garden for my friend. I'll put a link to that video here so that if you're interested, you can go and have a look at that original video, which was, she'd moved into a new build and she had this garden which was, it didn't have any soil in it, so it was a bit problematic, and she asked me to do a bit of a design for it. So I did that design. She really liked it, and she's been getting quotes and things, and anyway, the project has now started. So I went around the other day to see progress, and I'm also just advising on changes and details and that type of thing. So the builder is actually doing a sort of a GoPro stop go film, I don't know what they're called, where they do it really fast and sort of do it in cuts, whatever that's called. So he's actually doing GoPro video, which he said I could put on the channel, which would be very exciting. But I'll put out a little video maybe next week, which is a little short snippet that I took when I went over the other day of the progress. It's really exciting, and obviously that's been taking a little bit of my time. Anyway, enough waffle from me. Let's get on with the making of my coat for my holiday capsule wardrobe. I found a few of my patterns. I have this pattern, which is a sort of is one of these vintage repro patterns, but it has this sort of swing coat shape. But it has raglan sleeves on it, but it has a centre seam down the back, and I think it has raglan sleeves. No, it doesn't, it has grown-on sleeves. So this has got like a centre seam down the back and grown-on sleeves. Obviously they're 3/4 sleeves here, but that is essentially made in 4 pieces. There's 2 pieces at the back joined in the centre and 2 front pieces. I would want the sleeves to be a little longer than that, but possibly doable. I also have another pattern, which is a vintage pattern here, which has a hood. And I thought it would be nice to have a rain jacket that has a hood on it. So I'm wondering whether I can use this hood pattern and somehow attach it to this swing coat pattern. I have another swing coat pattern in my collection, which is a quick sew pattern. This one, when I looked at the pattern pieces, seems to be a bit fuller than this one. So this pattern, which I like the best, which is all grown on sleeve and everything, it's got the back is quite flared, but the front is more straight. And I think I would want a coat that is flared all the way around. But saying that, I have to see how much fabric I have and if it's possible. So anyway, from these patterns that I have pulled out some of the instructions and some of the pattern pieces, and I'm just sort of wondering whether I can make a simple swing coat with a hood. Hopefully I will have enough time to give this coat a go, because as I say, looking at the forecast again today, in Europe, in Germany and in France, it is actually warmer in New Zealand than it is in Europe. And given that we go in 2 weeks, I'm actually quite concerned I'm going to be cold. I was sort of anticipating these sort of heat wave temperatures. Summer, you know, summer as summer is in my head, but that's probably not summer in Germany or France maybe. I don't know. I'm a bit concerned about the temperature, so I'm thinking now a coat would be good, and I think I'll put a jumper in as well. This is the fabric I have. So I bought this years ago. It's nylon. I have 5 meters of it. It's a sort of shower-proof nylon, and I think it's really quite nice. It's got little tiny checks on it. It's got little tiny checks on it. It's black, which I don't usually wear black. I don't like black, but with the little checks on it, almost looks dark grey, and I do wear dark grey. So I've got 5 meters of that. I've also found some lining, which is a really sort of fine cotton lining, which I think would go quite nicely. I've only got 3 meters of this. So fingers crossed I'm going to have enough in these fabrics to do the job. We will have to see. But the first job, and have I got thread? Yeah, it's black thread really, isn't it? Yes, I've got enough thread. So there's no fastenings or anything on here. There's no buttons or anything. Looking at the image of the coat that I like, it seems to just basically wrap over and tie. So there's no fastenings or anything like that. If I did do anything, I might just do like one big button at the top where the hood comes round if I wanted to sort of close it up. But I'll see on that when I sort of got down the track and made it mostly, I think. Anyway, that's the fabric, that's the plan. My next job is to get out a lot of paper and try and draft this thing. Now, I don't know if my table in here is going to be big enough. I shall do my best, but I think I may have to move to the dining room table, which is not as good, to be honest. This desk that I have here, this table that I have here, is it's an IKEA standing desk. So this bit is loose, this top just comes off, and then it's on these sort of wooden trestles. And I find this brilliant because I can get it to the right height, and then I can stand and do my cutting and pinning, and it has really been a game changer for me, because I used to cut out on the dining room table or on the, on the floor, and after I'd been cutting something out, I spent the next day in agony because my knees and my back and my arms and everything hurt. So this table has been absolutely brilliant. But I may have to move to the kitchen table, the big kitchen table, but that does mean I have to lean over a bit, which is not ideal. So I'm going to try here first, but next time you see me, I might be in there. The other challenge I have just spotted is that this coat is in size 16, 18, 20 and 22. So that is going to be way too big for me, way too big. But I don't think it matters, because what I'm going to do is actually, all the jackets that I've made, the Carmen, the Audrey, all of those jackets have been made with a grown-on sleeve in, in a very similar sort of, grown-on sleeve sort of way. So I know that that's the right size for a sort of an overtop for me, I might make it a little bit bigger just because it is a coat and needs to go over the jackets. But I have that as a sort of a size model. So I might take the shape off this one, well, some elements of the shape, but then sense check it and reduce the size from the Audrey pattern. Oh, heavens. It's getting very complicated, isn't it? But I think we have enough bits to make this work. I must have just seen this and gone, ooh, that's pretty, and bought it, just $1 probably, and didn't actually look at the size range. But never mind, we can make it work. I'm using all sorts of anything I've got to hold this down because I don't want to pin it, because obviously the more holes I have in it, the less waterproof it's going to be. So yeah, I'm just trying to do it with pattern weights. Well, makeshift pattern weights, shall we say. Now I'm quite lucky with this fabric because it is well, it's a little check, but it's the same both sides and the same upside down and sideways. So what I'm going to do is I've got the front pieces are going to be the lengthways, and then the back piece I'm going to try and do sideways because I don't have room to cut them all out lengthways, and I'm hoping that won't matter. I mean, it seems to be, there's no stretch in it either way, and the fabric sort of looks the same all the way around, I think, upside down, inside out, back to front. So hopefully it'll work. Right. Okay. I have most of the pieces sorted out. The pattern pieces are huge. I have hopefully worked them out. Okay, fingers crossed. I mean, it's just like a big tent really, but I don't know. Yeah, did it take me a lot longer to work out than I imagined? Yes, it did. A lot longer. But I've got the 4 main pieces cut out now. It was a real trick. I had 5 meters of this outside fabric. I only have 3 meters of the lining fabric. What I'm going to do with that, I don't know. I'm going to have to try and be creative with it. Maybe patchwork with some other lining fabric. I'm not sure. Certainly the sleeves will have to be in something different. But we'll get to that later. The first thing I want to do, well, the first thing I'm going to do is have some lunch because it's 2 o'clock. And I haven't eaten anything yet. So the first thing, of course, is to try and put some of these pieces together to try and form an outer shell to see how it's working. I haven't cut the facings yet. The pattern that I'm going, the hood pattern that I'm going from, this one, is an unlined jacket. So that hasn't actually got a facing. And then the main coat, which I am going with, this one, is lined, but it's lined, I don't know if you can see from the picture here on the collar, it is lined right to the very edge. So it's almost like the front is one fabric and the inside is a different fabric, but the pattern pieces are identical. I don't want that. I want waterproof fabric sort of coming here, and on the inside I want waterproof fabric just for the first piece. The hood, I don't know if I've got enough to do it in waterproof fabric, to be honest, but I certainly want a border all the way around the hood, round the and on the inside of the coat. That much, but I don't know if I've got enough fabric, so I'll have to see what I can do about that. But the first job, of course, is to stitch these together and see if it makes a coat. Okay, so this is where we're up to with the coat. It's just a single layer of nylon. I've got the grown on sleeves there, and so it'll be held in with a belt. I've got some pockets. I've put pockets either side. They're a little bit lower down there because I figure when I get it held in with a belt, it will bring it up a little bit. I'll bring the pockets up a little bit. I've got a real sort of Darth Vader thing going on here, which is quite nice. But I'm thinking that maybe some form of button here would be good. Yeah, I've tested the fabric for waterproofness, and the water does sort of bead on it and run off. So, I mean, it's just literally shower proof. But I think with the lining, it will certainly cut a little bit of wind, add another layer, and be shower proof. I am doing my absolute best to get the facings out of this remaining fabric. I've got little tiny scraps, some of which I'm actually going to piece together some pieces to try and make the belt, because I don't have a piece that's long enough to make the belt. So I'm going to make those in sort of sections, really. But I think once it's tied you won't notice. So I think that the only other thing I could do would be to use a belt that is just a normal belt that isn't of this fabric, but I really wanted a self belt. I have actually managed to find enough fabric to make the facings and the hood lining out of this fabric. I'm going to have to, one piece that I've got here is all in one piece. So one half of it will be all in one piece. The other half, I'm going to have to join it. But I figure if I join it here, on the facing, on the inside of the coat here, as long as the shawl piece that you see in the hood is all one piece, the bit that carries on down the coat, it'll be on the inside, and I could always, I don't know, put a label on it or make it look like it's on purpose. So one side will be joined in two pieces, one side will be all in one piece. Maggie deciding something's going on out there, but there really isn't. There's nobody there, Maggie. Then that lining only really has to do the inside of the jacket, the inside body of the jacket. And again, if I don't have enough, I can, I think, use a different lining for the sleeve lining. The other thing, to cut this out of the fabric in the big pieces, I ended up making the sleeves a little bit short, so they only come to about there. Is that in shot? Yes. They only come to about there. So they're a little bit short, but again, I think I've got enough little scraps and pieces that I can put a cuff on the bottom. Then I do have some little pieces left, because of course I'll need some belt loops. So by the time I finish this thing, I am going to have the most minutest bit of fabric left. But it'll be all good use of the fabric with none left over. I had ideas and dreams that maybe I could make a little matching tote bag. Ha ha ha. That's not happening. But I think at this point, fingers crossed, I've got enough bits and pieces that I can make the bits I need. Anyway, I'm still not home and dry, so fingers crossed. Okay, I'm trying to cut out the lining fabric. Again, I'm going to have to do it on the dining room table. Two issues. One issue is this mark that you can see through the fabric. This is actually a sun fade mark. I realised that the way I was storing my fabrics on it's an IKEA, I want to say Calex, is that right? And obviously heaps and heaps of people use these for fabric, on the internet, on YouTube and things, but they don't live in New Zealand. And New Zealand has incredibly harsh sunlight and UV. So even though this cabinet is at the back of my sewing room, the edges of the fabric are getting faded. I realised this a few months ago, and I've actually covered it with a piece of fabric. So I have plans to actually put a curtain up there and do it a little bit more fancily. But anyway, for the moment, that is doing the job. The other issue is that this piece for the back is actually cut on sort of the bias, if you like. If you can, my pattern pieces are always a bit of a mess, aren't they? All covered in bits of sticky tape and paper. But anyway, hopefully you can see this line through the middle is actually sort of on the bias. I can't get those two pattern pieces on my lining on the bias. They just won't fit on the fabric. So I'm going to take the bold step of actually cutting them with the grain line. It's a lining. I don't think it'll matter that much. I always say that, don't I? And then it bites me in the bum. But hey, that's the plan that I've got at the moment. Well, it's my only option, really. Okay, so I have the lining and I have joined it to the facing. So yeah, I think it's very fine, this fabric, but I wanted it to be a really lightweight coat. That's Maggie having a bark. I wanted it to be a really lightweight coat for the summer, for us sort of, obviously, because hopefully it's going to be warmer than it is at the moment. But anyway, yeah, so that's all together. I need to clip the neck so it sits properly, and then maybe pin it into the coat, and hopefully it all goes together okay. Okay, it is finished. Difficult to see, isn't it, when you're holding the camera, because you can't see all of it. But anyway, yeah, so it is done. I have the lining in, well, done, I say done, it's in one piece. So yeah, I've got the lining in, the hood goes up and down like anything. I haven't done the belt yet, or the belt loops, but I am pretty pleased. The pockets, like that, the back is swing coaty. What I need to do now is top stitch this edge really. At the moment it's just pressed, but ideally it needs top stitching so that it doesn't sort of come apart. I like the curve that comes around here and comes around. It's so gorgeous. I'm really pleased with the way the hood is sitting. I'm actually toying with, could I do some sort of bias binding edge just to sort of make it pop? I don't know. I'm going to pin it on and see what I think. Okay, so what do you think? I have just pinned on this bias binding, and yeah, I think it just looks cool. I think it just adds a little bit of something unique and a little bit extra. And we like a bit of extra. Just putting this bias binding on the edge. I think I'm just going to turn it over and then just sort of top stitch on top of the bias binding. I don't think I'll be able to sort of open it up and then fold it round and catch it. I think I'll just top stitch it on. That way I can sort of see where it is. It has to be top stitch, and of course some parts of the collar are on the inside and some parts are on the outside, so there isn't really a sort of a right side, if you like. Anyway, this bias binding I got from the charity shop, so I was quite pleased with that. $2. $2, and it's quite an old one, I think. Made in New Zealand, which I'm pretty sure is rare now. NZ, I don't know if that company still exists. Polycotton 10mm bias binding. It says 4 meters, so there is just enough. I have a little bit left at the end, but yeah, just enough. And it was the right sort of colour. I've got all sorts of bits of bias binding. I tend to pick up notions and bias binding and useful bits and pieces as I'm going around if I see them in a charity shop. And this was a particularly sort of bright red, and I really like it. I mean, the grey of the coat is nice, and I think it's quite sophisticated. I mean, it's what I had in my stash. Obviously, it appealed to me at some time in the past. But I just think adding this pop of red, you know, when it's raining, it's usually a bit of a miserable grey sort of day, and so having a little pop of red, I think makes it a bit more fun and jolly. I am getting 80s vibes from it though. But I'm sure that's coming back, or has come back, or will come back, or something. But I don't know. I can't really. It reminds me of something, and I don't quite know what. This sort of reminds me of school sort of graph paper, and then this red. If anybody knows what it reminds me of, please put in the comments below. I can't think, but I mean, there's a little bit of sort of. Is it Louboutin, those fancy shoes that are sort of black with sort of red soles? That's what I'm going with. That's I think it makes it a lot more designer, don't you? Yeah. If Louboutin was going to make a coat, I think it would be like this. Anyway, I'll get on and put this bias binding on. And then I've got to try and stitch it straight so that the stitching is neat. But, you know, it's a coat. There's a lot going on. Probably people aren't going to look that closely at my stitching. I've got to work out, or do I have thread to match? I'll have to look, hopefully. Okay, I'm really pleased with the that bias binding. I don't know if you can see, looking really sharp. I love that pop of colour. I'm really pleased I did that. I'll leave the coat on ordinary for the moment because with it being such a wide sort of triangle shape, there's so much of that fabric that's going to be on the bias. I'm not quite sure how nylon behaves, but certainly there's that cotton lining as well. So I'm just going to leave it there to sort of settle and hopefully hang and get to the length it's going to be. And then this weekend I shall give my daughter the wonderful job hemming that coat, which is going to be a bit of a nightmare. I haven't broken it to her yet, but and a bit annoyingly, my handy dandy hemmer, which was this beautiful vintage, well, I don't know if it's beautiful because it's obviously orange plastic, but it's a hemmer and it's so useful. So I got it from a charity shop a couple of years ago now. I've used it quite a lot. It's been really useful because what happens is that this was sort of sat out there, sprung almost on its plastic, and then you put the fabric in between here and then you pinch it and you can stick the pin straight through, and it was so useful. But this bit snapped off. I imagine this plastic is a bit old, and yeah, it just snapped off. So I really don't know if I can fix that because it's obviously it's an area that it's supposed to bend. So if I glue it, I don't know how much it's sort of going to do the bendy thing. So yeah, I might try a duct tape solution, a temporary duct tape solution. See if that will work. Anyway, I'm on the lookout for another one of these, but how often do these things turn up? I mean, I'd never seen one before when it came in the charity shop, and I thought, oh, what's that for? Then I thought, oh, it's some sort of hemming thing, and then when I looked online, I figured out how it worked. Why don't they do these things nowadays? They just don't seem to do this sort of cleverness nowadays. I got sidetracked there, didn't I? I always do. So what's left to make? Well, the sleeves are too short, so I need to make some sort of cuffy piece on it. Obviously, I want some form of belt on it as well, so that I can wear it sort of cinched in. Oh, and then there'll be some little belt loops. The belt's on. I made the little belt carriers. You possibly can't see that, but the little belt carriers are on and stitched. So that's all good. The only thing when I was trying it on was I was thinking it would be really nice to be able to, when it's raining and I've got the hood up, it would be really nice to have some form of sort of button or something here. So I went through my stash looking for interesting buttons that were of a sort of a size and a statement that could be like one button on a coat. And I also only wanted to use buttons that I had only one of, because if I've got like 4 and I use 1, then I've got 3 buttons, it's sort of more difficult to use. So these buttons go with the colourway and I only have 1 of them. So there's this button, which is red, but it's not quite the right red. So there's this button. So that's a sort of a vintage, button, but not quite the right colour. Then there's this button, which is very modern, and I don't know, I think it completely changes the vibe of the coat. This one, as you can see, is really ultra modern. So I'm not sure about that one, but then I found this one, and this is my favourite. Because it's sort of subtle, it's black, which goes with the coat. It's got a really interesting texture. It's a vintage button, but it's so cool that I feel it's sort of, it has that vintage look, which is sort of the shape of the coat, but also sort of looks modern. Love the texture. So this is what I'm leaning with at the moment. And my plan is, I don't really want to put like a buttonhole here, because there'll be like one buttonhole. I think it'll just look a bit naff. So last night I came up with the plan that what I could do is actually make a little bias binding loop that would sort of sit this way behind the lapel when it's open, and then when I closed it I could open this loop over and loop it round the button. and it would be in this red bias binding, so it would be a loop like that. Hopefully that makes sense, but I think that's what I'm going to do. Rather than making a buttonhole that's going to show here, I think that could be quite an elegant solution.